Hey guys, it's Danny here, and today I'm going to teach you how to turn old riffs into modern riffs. So let's take a look to my arrangement first, and then I'm going to break it down and explain it to you guys. So that's my version of Paranoid, and I'm gonna explain what I did in this song. So let's look at the original riff together. So it sounds like this. So it's actually a 1-bar loop. If you want to make it modern, you can make it longer. So I tend to make it a 16-bar loop, so it sounds less repetitive. The first thing you have to think of is the key of the song. For example, in this song, it's the key of G or E minor, and it's perfectly good for guitar because you know the guitar tuning is actually a E minor chord. And you can play the minor pentatonic right here, or the minor 9 arpeggios. Very good key on the guitar. Also, you can make use a lot of open strings, etc. For this song, I'm gonna stay in the same key. After determining the key, you have to think of the riff, like what you should keep in this riff. Some of the song, even though you don't play the note, you can still recognize it. For example, if I play this thing, even without any note, I think you can still recognize the song. Or if I play this note without the original rhythm, you can still recognize it, right? So it's very essential for you to determine like what you have to keep or what you can change in this old riff. So for this song, I think it's quite important to keep both, because if you change too much of either part, it sounds very different and you cannot recognize the song. And then the next part you have to think of is the chord, because back in the days, a riff usually they stay in the same chord. So for this riff, it stays in the E minor. It also sounds good, but if you want to make it modern, you can insert more chord and make it sound like a whole story. So in terms of how to harmonize this melody, actually you have a lot of chords to use. For example, if you stay in the diatonic chord progression, it means you use every chord in the key of G or E minor. So we have the first chord G major, the second A minor, the third B minor, the fourth C major, the fifth D major, the sixth E minor, and the seventh F sharp diminished, and then go back to 1. You can choose this chord, or you can actually use any chord, because according to Jacob,
let me tell you, every single note works with every single chord.
Okay, so I'm gonna show you some of the example you can use. 2-5-1. So it sounds very good and it sounds very warm. And then there's also one of the chord progression I really like. Start with the 1 chord, so G major. And then the 5th chord, but make it minor. And go back to the 1, make it a dominant. And the 4th chord. And then the 4th chord again, but make it minor. So it's also a very nice chord progression. For my arrangement, I use my favorite chord progression. So we start with the 4 chord, the C major, and then 3, B major, and the 6. Why I like this so much is because it sounds very good, and you can make a lot of variation in it. Other than using the diatonic chord progression, you can actually harmonize the melody with any chord you want. You can see for the B note, if you want to choose, for example, start with the A note, you can make it major 9, minor 9. For A sharp, you can make it A sharp 7 flat 9. So for B, B major, B minor, B diminished. So C, C major 7, C minor major. So C sharp, you can make C sharp minor 7, C sharp sus. So any chord you want. After determining the chord progression, and then you have to like fit in the chord with the melody, and basically that's all. So let's take a look to my arrangement together. Here is my version of Paranoid. You can see the Guitar Pro here. I made this tab, and for this arrangement I plan to do two parts. The first part is like higher notes in the higher position, so I have a more Ichika vibe. And then the second section we go back to the lower notes and have this theme vibe there. For the first section, because I want to play the whole riff on higher position, and then I have to play different inversion of the chord. So this chord here is 17 and then 19 here. So I call it this neo chord because like in every neo soul song you can see this chord. Here is an important tip, is that you have to put the melody on the top of the chord, so we can recognize it at first. So you can see I just play the chord and the melody together right here. And then for the rest of the riff, instead of playing every note with the pick, I play with tapping, so it has a more legato feeling, right? And then the second bar is basically the same thing, but I changed the chord to the B major. So basically half step down, and then for the third chord I want to make it a bit different. So instead of using E minor, I use this E sus and following the same melody. And then the last bar I change to the E major. So it sounds a bit different than 4, 3 and then 6 chord progression. So for the second loop here, I try to keep the same thing and then insert more variation. So you can see the melody is still on the same subdivision of the beat. And then I insert some of the chord note in between. And the second bar the same, the third bar the same. But at the end I try to like throw in more notes, flex a little bit, you know. And then for the note choice here, instead of the E minor pentatonic, I really like to throw in a note that is not expected. So instead of going to the E minor pentatonic, I go to the E major pentatonic. So that note here, the major third, really has that feeling that you didn't expect it coming, right? And then going back to the last chord, so I just make less note here and then let it ring on the harmonic. So that's the first section, and then go to the next section. So we going back down to the lower position, and it's the same stuff, chord melody, but for this bar here I changed the chord a little bit. So start with the 4 C major and B major the same, and here I just go back to the E minor, so very common chord progression. But for the last one, we are going back to the first bar, so leading back to it, we call it a turnaround. I really like this C sharp minor going back to the C major 7, the sound of it. It is really nice and it resolves really perfectly. And then, so I decided to use this chord. And I came up with a rhythm for this chord. So I basically play the chord with this rhythm, and then I make some variations. So instead of staying on the root note, I go to the third. Something like that. And then you can see here, this 3 note is also B, so the main melody that you can see they're still in the same subdivision of the beat. And for the middle one, because you know this hammer on in this song Paranoid is like very signature, you have to keep it. Because they are free time, so I decided to like change one of it. It doesn't hurt, right? So I put the middle one, the B note here, I put it to the open string, so it has a lead ring effect, and still has that signature hammer on for the first and the third one. For the next part here, I'm playing the same note, but in different position and with different articulation. And the last one, so actually just open string and some octave displacement. And the next chord, the same thing. The first one, we start with the chord and the melody on top, and then also with another bass, and then the hammer on stuff, and the same thing. And then we start with the second note on the chord. So for here, you can see that the melody I changed a little bit is because I think after listening to first bar, I think most of us can recognize it's Paranoid. So I'm gonna change more as the song goes. So the third bar, the same thing. So you can see the hammer on right here, hammer on right here, and the open string in between. And then also the melody here. And I want to change more, so throw in some harmonic here. And then instead of going back to these 2 notes, I go to the harmony of it. So you can hear something like that. And then I want to make it more interesting, so I play the first 3 notes with harmonic, and the last note go back to the open string. So you can see this 2-beat has that same feeling, has an open string at the end of the beat. So I want to keep that. And then we go to the last bar. So usually the last bar, I tend to change most of it and then throw in some fast fill, so more flex here. And the chord here, you can see C sharp minor. And then these 2 notes, I make it to harmonic. Yeah, because more variation. And the hammer on again. And yeah, the flex part here. So I just came up with these licks here. So I think it's pretty cool. This technique I learned from Tim is to make use of the open string and the tapping. So you can see the last bar here, I use the open string and the tapping. And then we're going back to the first bar, so I choose to repeat the same thing. For the second bar here, because it's the second repeat, so I decide to throw in more flex here. More 16 triplet. It's the same as before, the left hand tapping technique and the open string. And there's a little part here, is the last 4 note. It's actually the melody. So if you listen to melody, the last note here is the melody. So that's also something I really like to do, is to hide the melody inside the fast fill, so you can kind of recognize it, but it sounds very different. For the next bar, because I want to have a greater impact, so you can see the first beat, I just play the low note and some fast muted note, and then another low note. And you can see these 2 notes, they're in the same subdivision of the beat as before. The first beat and the second 16 note, right? So I want to keep that rhythm. And then for here, I go back to the melody, the B note, but instead of going to the hammer on, I go to the harmonic here. And then the same thing. And then go back to the last bar. And because I make a lot of difference before, so I'm gonna say the same on the last bar. So it's the same. And then land on the first chord. So that's basically how I arrange the whole song. And I suggest you to like go crazy about the notes and be more creative, because you know, like for the melody here, you can make it harmonic maybe, or you can use octave displacement, like you play 2 notes here, and second 2 notes in higher octave, and then come back here, and then something like this, or just combine different techniques and make it sound very interesting. That's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and tell me what riff you would like to see next. Don't forget to share the video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. See you next time. Bye.